Hello everyone, can you hear me? Supayan, hi, good afternoon. Hiren, good afternoon. Priya, good afternoon everyone. Is the audio okay? Vimla Devi, good afternoon. Audio is clear, that's good. Okay, Vimla Devi, is it like your first class that you're attending? Because I don't remember seeing your name. Is it the first class that you're attending? Okay. So why did you start so late? Because we have done so many classes so far. It's like the entire month of October, and then we just started in November. So why did you join so late? Yes, Muskan, good afternoon. So I'm going to wait for a minute for everyone else to join, and then we will start. And I don't remember all the names, but I think I've seen Hiren's name for that. I think purple cap or something that you dedicated with a nice comment. Thank you for that. Okay, you are in an Unacademy subscription class. Okay, so is the timing the problem? Does it clash with that subscription class? Good afternoon, Reshma. Okay, thank you, Hiren. Okay, so let's get started with what we have planned. And in the previous lecture, that is yesterday, we talked about some other respirations, and that was like cutaneous respiration, that is through skin, then tracheary respiration, that is in case of insects. Anusha has also joined. Good afternoon, Anusha. Okay, you know what happens is, like normally when we have a physical classroom, you can ask so many things sorry, to the students, that where were you, what were you doing, and all these things. But in an online and live online class, it's like whatever you write, I have to just read that. And in physical classes, the advantage is that you see each other's face, and the expressions help. For a teacher, if I can understand from the face of my student whether they are understanding or not. But here you can see me, but I don't see you, so everything is dependent on what you write. Okay, so after doing these two types of respirations, that is cutaneous and the tracheary respirations, we plan to discuss few important things in today's class also. We will be talking about branchial respiration, pulmonary respiration. Now, branchial respiration is respiration through gills. So we need to know some basic things about the gills, and one important thing, that is counter current in respiration. And then we will start with human respiratory system. Those who are new, this screen is for them. This is some information about me, that is your biology teacher. And this is about the platform that we are using. Now, those students who have taken the subscription, they know the app, they have already installed the app. But those who are only on YouTube and not taking advantage of the special classes which are available on app. And you know, there are some special classes which are free. Everything is not paid there, but those will be available only on the app. So for that, you will have to install this app. Plus, there is one added feature. Like after the class on the app, like when I take a special class and you have taken installed this app, after the class those lectures, that PDF is available to you. So you can use that PDF as your notes. And this is the Plus subscription. Those who have paid for that plan, they get the daily live access to the classes, like right now I was talking about. So there are scheduled classes, structured courses are there, and these students, they also get quizzes and mock tests and everything. This is a new plan that they have introduced, that is along with Plus, every benefit of Plus, you also get a personal coach, there is test analysis, which is very important, and a planner. Because normally I have seen that students ask that how do we plan? What kind of a schedule should we maintain? Should we study 2 hours, 3 hours, morning, evening? So here there is a planner also for you. So this is just a comparison between Plus and Iconic, and this is the fee structure basically. So if you compare these two figures, you can definitely find a difference. So just 1 month it is 6,000 something, and 12 months is like only 34,000. So here you anyways get a discount if you go for a long-term plan, and for 10% additional, you have to use this code, that is my code, while you purchase the subscription. For Iconic, the pricing is slightly more because it comes with the special features like the personal tutor and all those things, and here you have 6, 12 and 24 month plans, and here also there is a discounted price. Okay, so those who have not taken the subscription, they need to decide on this fast. And let me not forget this. Don't forget to use this so that you get the discount. Okay, let me see who all have joined now. Last was Anusha, I think. Anusha, your lectures notes are super. Thank you, Anusha. Thank you so much. Hi Kalai, good afternoon Raj. Anusha is saying this is the first time I'm attending your live class. Why so late? Why are you so late in joining the live classes? Because I've been taking live classes for quite some time now. Okay, used to watch the recorded one. See, everything is same in the recorded and the live, but only thing is in the live you can message me, I reply to your messages, so there is a little more interaction in the live one. But if it is just the content part, it is available in the recorded also. But the doubt solving thing is not going to work in the recorded one. Like while watching the video, if there is a doubt, you won't be able to ask me then in the recorded one. But here you can message me and I can take that question. Okay, now let us start with our first topic, that is branchial respiration. So what exactly we mean by branchial respiration? Respiration through gills is called branchial respiration. And where do we find these gills? Predominantly fishes. But we wrote some examples in the earlier class also, that is larva of frog tadpole, some crustaceans or arthropods, that is prawn, and some mollusk. they have respiration through gills. Now, an organism who has to take oxygen using gills as the structure, what are the complications that these organisms face? Oxygen is dissolved in water, and if the organism has to take this dissolved oxygen, then there are certain points or issues which you need to understand. First, water is a denser medium, right? We know about this, and it is 800 times denser. Water is 800 times denser, and I'm sure you know the factors which affect the rate of diffusion. More dense the medium, slower is going to be the diffusion, and less denser the medium, faster is going to be the diffusion. So it is 800 times denser than air. So if diffusion is taking place from air to the surface, then it is going to be 800 times faster, whereas if it is in water, it's going to be 800 times denser, and so it is going to be slower. The second point when we are talking about this is water contains less oxygen as compared to air. And how much less? This much less. So less oxygen from a dense medium, and here the rate of diffusion is times slower. So if the organism is aquatic and it has to take oxygen for its aerobic breakdown, then what are the problems or what are the hurdles that they face? Water is a denser medium. It has less oxygen as compared to air, and the rate of diffusion is also much slower in water as compared to air. Then how come these organisms who show branchial respiration are able to survive in all these things? It means they must have certain adaptations. Okay, now do we know what is the structure of a gill? Now if you're talking about a gill, there are various types of gills. We'll maybe let us talk about the types, but before the type I'm going to give you the basic structure of a gill. So gill has a central tube or a part through which the blood vessels are going to pass, and on either side there are these kind of lamellae, and these lamellae are of very fine membrane. That means it is like the squamous epithelium. So now when water passes through it, all this surface area is available for the exchange of gases, and through this tube there will be blood vessels going into each of these lamella. Now the gills can be external or internal. Now where do we find external gills? We find external gills in tadpole. I'm sure you've seen the structure of tadpole. This is how the shape is. It has a tail also, and here you find these gills. They are protruding out of the body. So these gills are called external gills. Whereas when we see a fish, what is visible to us is only the slit. The gill is not visible. It is a slit which is visible. So these lines which are visible, they are called gill slits. And the gills are actually inside. So if you see from outside, this is a slit, this is another slit, this is another slit. So these are the slits which are visible. And inside this, now there are these gills. So these are internal. Gills are not visible to us. Okay, and then we can also have various types of gills on the basis of location. Where are they located? Are they located on the arthropodial membrane? Are they located in the skin? Or are they located outside? So there are various kinds of classifications, but we don't have to go into the detail of that classification. Hiren is saying that sudden change in temperature causes decrease in dissolved oxygen. That is why warm water released by factories affects organism. Yes, warm water has less oxygen holding capacity. But when we are talking about this, we are actually talking about all natural condition. Okay, so this is what we mean when we talk about the gills. Now, how do these organisms take water? They have adaptation. There are two adaptations. Number one is there is continuous flow of water over the gill membranes, over the gills we can write, and second is counter current. Counter current. Okay, now let us understand what is this counter current and what is meant by co-current. Counter current, we would require this when we come to excretion and osmoregulation chapter. Suppose this is the surface of the gill and there is continuously flowing water on it. The gills, because these are the respiratory surfaces or membrane, there is a continuous blood supply. That means they are vascular. Okay. Now, if you're talking about counter current, say this is the blood vessel and here the blood is flowing in this direction. And let us draw the gill membrane and say on the gill water, let me draw it a little darker. So this is the surface of the gill and here water is flowing in the same direction. Okay, suppose the water is also flowing in the same direction. Now let us see that if blood comes here and the water which is bringing oxygen comes here, water which is bringing oxygen is going to have more oxygen, and the blood which is coming here is say deoxygenated blood. If the deoxygenated blood comes here, it has definitely less oxygen. So diffusion will take place from higher concentration of oxygen to lower concentration. It's a passive process. So a stage will come that it will become 50 here, 90 here. A stage will come when it becomes 60 here, 80 here. A stage will come when it becomes 70 here and 70 here. Now at these two places, concentration of oxygen is same. Now when we talk about diffusion, it is from higher concentration to lower. Now when you see at both the places concentration is same, then do you think this much of oxygen is going to move into the blood? Not possible. That means this much oxygen will go along with water without being absorbed. This is co-current. Co-current means when two liquids are flowing in the same direction very close to each other. So one liquid is flowing in the blood vessel, that is blood. The other liquid which is flowing on the surface of the gill is water. Okay. Now how counter current is going to work? Again, let us take this. This is the surface of the gill, and this is the direction in which water is flowing. So here is water coming in. Now let us talk about this blood vessel. Here is a blood vessel which is very close to this gill membrane, and the blood is moving in the opposite direction. So two liquids flowing in the opposite direction, very close to each other. Blood in the blood vessel and water on the surface of the gill. Okay, now what will happen? So this water which is coming in here, say has 100, this is just an example, say 100 molecules of oxygen. The blood comes from here, it is deoxygenated blood, and when deoxygenated blood comes here, it has less oxygen. So blood which comes in contact with this is having less oxygen. Okay, diffusion will take place. So from here, some oxygen will diffuse, it will become 90, and oxygen will diffuse into the blood. Now this more oxygen containing blood is going to flow out. The fresh blood which is coming is again coming deoxygenated. So now it is 90 and 40. Again there is going to be diffusion. It will become 50. This blood is going to flow out. Now it is 80. Okay, now the blood which comes in front of 80 is again 40. Again diffusion will take place. It is going to be 50, again 40, and so on. So more and more diffusion of oxygen from water will take place into the blood. So these are the two mechanisms by which the aquatic organisms are able to take oxygen from water. Okay? Are these problems clear? That aquatic organisms encounter these three difficulties, and these difficulties are that there is a more denser medium in which this diffusion is taking place, and the medium is water. Second, that water has less oxygen, and third, the rate of diffusion is also very, very slow. So less oxygen, medium is dense, the process is also slow. And in this condition also, these organisms, they are able to survive. That means they are able to take that oxygen which is required for their metabolic activities. How do they do it? Two methods. There has to be a continuous flow of water on the gills, and we know gill membrane is a respiratory surface. So it must be fulfilling all the characteristic features like very thin, moist, richly supplied with blood and with pigments, and greater surface area. So all characteristics are fulfilled. And two things, continuous flow of water and counter current mechanism. This is how these aquatic organisms are able to take oxygen from water. Okay, so this is our third type of respiration, that is branchial respiration. Now let us come to the pulmonary respiration. What is pulmonary respiration? It is through lungs. When respiration takes place through lungs, then we call that respiration as pulmonary respiration. And this is seen in case of all higher animals, or we can see as example, after fishes, it is amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So in all these organisms, we find that respiration takes place through lungs. Dilip is saying, ma'am, please explain gill structure. Okay, let us go back to that. Here, see what happens in a gill is, in the middle there is a tube, and through this tube there would be blood vessels passing. So let me draw a blood vessel here. Suppose this is the blood vessel, and this blood vessel will have branches, okay, and these branches, they actually move like loops, so they'll come back like this, and these branches are actually going into the extension of this membrane, which is the gill surface. These are called lamellae. So if I enlarge one lamella, this is the lamella, okay, and on this lamella the water is going to flow in a particular direction. Say the water flows like this, it flows like this, okay, so or the water is going to flow in this manner, okay. So how is the blood going to move? The blood is going to move like this. This is the blood vessel. So from here the blood enters, this is opposite counter current mechanism, and from here the blood is going to come out. So there will be always oxygenated water which is going to come in contact with deoxygenated blood, and that is why there will be this diffusion, counter current mechanism. Yes ma'am, amphibians, reptiles, birds and not arthropods, okay. So and structure of gill, who was asking the structure of gill? Dilip, okay. Clear? So these structures are called the gill lamellae, and there is a central part through which the blood vessels and nerves and everything goes. Basic idea is through the lamella there should be water flowing in a particular direction, and inside that gill lamella there should be blood flowing in the opposite direction. So there will be a continuous blood supply and there will be a counter current mechanism, so that there is oxygen diffusion from water into the blood. Okay, is this clear now? All right, now let us talk about this organ and why in these animals like amphibians, reptiles, birds and mammals, why skin is not a proper structure for respiration. And that is why the lungs have to be formed, or that is why the lungs are formed. So we can say that skin is thick and impervious to gases. So it is thick, it is multi-layered and it is impervious. Now why is the skin thick? Because the animals from here, they have become terrestrial. So as the animals become terrestrial, water becomes a problem, water becomes a factor which can be scarce. So now the main agenda or the main concern is to conserve as much water as we can, and that is why the skin becomes thick or became thick. Okay, so there are messages which say clear, clear, clear. Very good. So skin is thick, and as soon as skin becomes thick, that means it is no longer a perfect surface area for respiration. Because we know respiratory membrane should be thin, highly vascular, richly supplied with blood, more surface area. So we have talked about this comparison of skin and alveoli. So those who did not attend that particular lecture, for them the respiratory surface area should be thin, it should be moist, it should be vascular, there should be larger surface area and there should be a pigment. If you compare alveoli and skin with this, alveoli is thin, only squamous epithelium, skin is not. Alveoli are moist because there are mucus glands, skin is not. Alveoli richly supplied with blood, epidermis, there is no blood supply, so here also no. Surface area, if you take out the complete skin and make it into a sheet, we said it is going to be 1.8 square meters. And if you do the same thing with the alveoli, it is going to be 200 square meters. Right? In our pigment, in our blood, we have the pigment, but that is if it is coming closer to the surface area or not. Okay, so this is pulmonary respiration, where the respiratory organs are how thick skin helps in conservation of water in terrestrial organisms. See, if the skin is thin and moist, what is meant by moist? It has mucus and water. This water is going to evaporate. And from where is this water coming? It is secreted by the mucus gland. So if mucus gland is secreting this mucus and water, that means it is taking water from inside. So if more and more water is lost, then for terrestrial organisms it is a problem, it is a concern. Okay? Clear? Okay, now we are talking about human respiratory system. Human respiratory system has three things. One, respiratory tract. First, respiratory tract. Two, respiratory organ. And three, diaphragm. Now what is included in respiratory tract? Everything from nostril to nasal chamber to trachea to bronchi to all the tubes which reach up to alveoli. And this is the organ that is lung and diaphragm. So diaphragm is the muscular structure which is essential for breathing, inhalation, exhalation. We will understand that when we come to the mechanism of breathing. Now I'm going to make the diagram first. We will label the diagram, all the parts, and then we will start taking individual parts. Okay? This part is palate, and here was that bulb-like structure. So this opening through which we breathe in are called nostrils or external nares. They are called external nares. This chamber is called the nasal chamber. This opening is called internal nares. And now if we come into the neck region, we find that there are two tubes. This is one tube which is anterior, and there is one more tube which is posterior to it. And behind this there is backbone. So these are the vertebrae. This is esophagus, and this pipe which we have drawn is the trachea. So when we breathe in, the air first goes into or through the nostrils into the nasal chamber. Now from the nasal chamber, the air is going to come into this part here. What are we going to call this part? This is called the pharynx part. So pharynx is actually a funnel shaped structure. So if I have to just show you the pharynx part, then this is just to understand the pharynx part, okay? Here was the tongue and then we have the teeth here. So this whole thing is buccal cavity, and now you can see here you're going to swallow, and this is how it is. So the part of pharynx which is the place where these internal nares open, I'm putting a star here, this is called nasopharynx. It is not a structure, it is just an area. So posterior part of buccal cavity which actually opens into our throat, where windpipe also opens, where the food pipe also opens. So there is a funnel-like area. That is what is pharynx. So the part of pharynx which is closer to the internal nares is called nasopharynx. The part which is closer to the back of the tongue from where you swallow, this part, is called oropharynx. It is called oropharynx. And the part which is closer to the larynx, where is larynx? It is like the upper part of trachea. So that part is called laryngopharynx. And in this nasopharynx part, there are actually openings of two things. One is internal nares, okay? Hiren is writing size of an average tennis court is 195 square meters. Yes, so that is how much is the area of our alveoli. Yes, you're right. And the second is of the eustachian tube. Very good, Ayush has given the answer. So in the nasopharynx, there are two pairs of openings. One are these internal nares, which straight from the external nair go backward and open in the middle part on the back side. And from either side there are two openings which are of eustachian canals or tubes. What are these eustachian tubes? They connect our middle ear to our pharynx or buccal cavity. When we talk about the structure of middle ear, we will talk about the eustachian tubes also. Okay? So now from here the air is actually going to enter into the trachea. To prevent the entry of anything else, what is that anything else? If you eat something and you swallow, that food has to go into the esophagus. So the path of air and food, they cross. And when the path crosses, then there is a chance that the food particles can enter into our windpipe, and that may result into choking. And that is why our elders tell us that you should not be talking while you're eating something. Because when we are eating and swallowing, at the time of swallowing, the windpipe, its opening closes. And when we are talking, at that time we are exhaling. And if we are exhaling, the air is coming from the lungs in the reverse manner. So through the trachea it is going to come out. So the opening has to be wide. So at that time, if you are talking and swallowing, talking and swallowing, so there is a risk that the food can enter into our windpipe. The opening of our windpipe is called glottis, and there is a structure which is going to guard it. What is that structure called? It is called epiglottis. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make trachea separately so that we are able to understand our respiratory tract properly. This opening is glottis, and there is a flap. Okay, so this flap, we will talk about this flap also later on. This flap is called epiglottis. Okay, and this tube that we have drawn is trachea, the windpipe, and it is made up of thin membrane. To protect it from collapsing, there are cartilaginous rings, and these are C-shaped cartilaginous rings. Why are they C-shaped and what is the number, that we will talk about later. Flap is a fold which closes. So if there is an opening like this, there will be a flap. The flap is going to close the opening and then it opens. Okay, so flap is just a fold, a membranous fold. Okay, clear? Now, how many cartilaginous rings and why are they C-shaped, that we will take up later. Now this trachea, it runs through the neck region, it enters into our chest cavity, and then it divides. This trachea is going to divide into two branches. And these two branches will ultimately open or enter into the lung. Let me make the lung with a different color so that all the structures are clear. The lungs are triangular structures . So these two tubes which we have drawn, this one is the left bronchus and this is the right bronchus. So there are two bronchi, left and right. Okay. Now, do you see a difference in the size of these two lungs? Is it by mistake or this is how they are? And in the left lung, you also find there is a depression here, right? We will talk about that depression. Okay, now I'm going to make a membrane around this lung. The lungs are surrounded by a double membranous structure, which is called pleura. It is a double membranous structure, and this part is very, very important for us to understand the breathing thing. See, this first membrane which I have drawn is almost attached to the membrane of the lung. Okay, this is the visceral membrane. And now let me draw the other one, the outer membrane. This is the parietal membrane. The inner one is visceral membrane and the outer one is parietal membrane, and both together form the outermost membrane, which is called pleura. Okay? It is due to the heart. Yes, I was asking about the question that there is a difference in the size of the lungs, the left and the right. So here also there is this visceral membrane and then the outer one, that is the parietal, and both these membranes together form the layer around the lung, and that layer is known as the pleura. Now between these two layers there is a fluid, and this fluid is called pleural fluid. So here there is a fluid which is filled inside between the two pleural layers. And the fluid is known as pleural fluid. And what is the function of this pleural fluid? It keeps the two membranes together. Now, what is outside this parietal membrane? Outside the parietal membrane is the thoracic wall. This is our thoracic cavity wall. And only for our understanding we have shown a space, but actually there is no space. So now let us understand this. Suppose this is surface of the lung. Then on this surface of the lung is present the visceral membrane. Okay? Attached to it. There is no space. Now if this is the visceral membrane, this is the pleural membrane. That means between the two membranes there is space. And in this space is present the pleural fluid. And this membrane is the parietal membrane. And outside the parietal membrane is our thoracic wall or cavity. And they are also attached. Why this is so important is because when this thoracic cavity expands, when we breathe in, the rib cage moves and this thoracic cavity is going to move out. And because these two membranes are attached, the outer membrane, that is parietal membrane, will also go out. The pleural fluid is keeping both the membranes together. So if the parietal membrane goes out, even the visceral goes out. If the visceral goes out, even the lung wall goes out. That means if the thoracic cavity increases, the pressure inside the lungs would decrease. Why would it decrease? Because thoracic cavity increases, thoracic wall moves out. Along with the wall, parietal membrane goes out. The fluid takes the visceral membrane also out, and visceral is attached to the lung wall. So lung wall also moves out. That means the volume of the lungs increases. If volume increases, pressure will decrease. And if pressure decreases, air is going to move in from higher pressure, that is atmosphere, to lower pressure, that is inside the lungs. This is what is inhalation. Okay? So the importance of this pleural fluid is very, very high. That it keeps the two membranes together. And here also there is this thoracic wall. Okay? And before we draw something else, let us draw the diaphragm. And this is the diaphragm. And that is why this chest cavity or the thoracic cavity becomes an airtight cavity. Okay. Now, let us talk about this depression which you see here. You see a depression here? This one? This is the place where our heart is located. So in the left lung there is a depression like this, and in this depression the heart is placed. So heart is in this middle part which is called mediastinum, slightly towards left side. Okay, and that is why the left lung is little smaller. Now, is this part clear? This depression is called cardiac notch. This is the depression in which our heart is placed. Now, let me just go inside the lungs now. The right lung has 3 lobes. The right lung has 3 lobes. So let me draw this lobe, upper 3. And here there are only 2 lobes. So this lobe is called the superior lobe. This one is the middle lobe. And this one is the inferior lobe. Whereas in the left lung there are only 2. This is superior lobe and this one is inferior lobe. Okay, so only 2 lobes in left lung and 3 lobes in right lung. Now let us see what happens to this bronchus which has entered into the lung. This bronchus which we have drawn is the first branch. Now this divides into 3 branches. So now let us start calling this one as primary bronchus and the branch as secondary bronchus. So how many secondary bronchi are there in the right lung? Thank you, Kalai. I hope you understand this and you are able to draw in the same manner with all the labels. In case of the left lung, there are only 2 branches. So in right lung, there are 3 secondary bronchi. In case of left lung, there are only 2 secondary bronchi. Now they will further divide and then you will start calling it tertiary bronchi. So here we will have further branching. Okay, so these ones are tertiary bronchi. The further branching we will see later, but ultimately it is going to end into alveolar sac where there would be alveoli. So at the end you will find those alveoli. So what is there in our lungs? There is the inlet through which the air goes in, that is nostril. From the nostril the air goes into nasal chamber. What are the nasal chamber parts? What is its function? That we will see little later. Then the nasal chamber opens into nasopharynx with the help of these openings which are called internal nares. From here, through nasopharynx and oropharynx, it gets into the trachea. Trachea is windpipe, its opening is called glottis and there is a flap like membranous fold or flap which closes it when you are swallowing. When the air comes into trachea, trachea is protected by these cartilaginous rings, and you know these cartilaginous rings, they are C-shaped and they are present in bronchi also, but normally we don't draw it here They are present in bronchi, primary, secondary, tertiary. So normally they are called cartilaginous rings. They are present in trachea, bronchi, and their function is to prevent these tubes from collapsing. You know, it is very simple. You can just move your hand on your neck like this. You will find that there is a tube here. You can hold it like this, and this tube is not smooth. You can find there is some kind of a bulge, and that is nothing but that cartilaginous ring. So it prevents the trachea or bronchi from collapsing. This is our respiratory system. Tract includes complete tube passage, then the respiratory organ, that is lungs, and diaphragm. Diaphragm is a muscular structure which is essential for breathing, for inhalation and exhalation. Okay, is this much part clear? If this is clear, then we will take up the next part. Is the diagram clear, or are all parts clear? And if there is any confusion, let me know. Piyush says it is clear. Hiren says it is clear. Anusha also says clear. Lokpal says clear. Very good. Priya also says it is clear. Okay, very good. So if we have to draw the diagram of respiratory system, then what all parts should be there? Muskan, Dilip also say clear. Very good. So what all parts should be there if we are talking about our our respiratory system? The best is if you can make that outline of the face. So that becomes very, very clear that what and where is that structure. Okay, I have drawn this diagram in two parts. I have separated the upper part, that is the head and the neck region, and then started with trachea on a separate in a separate diagram, keeping in mind that constraint of space. Because if you make, or if I make everything on one page, you know, sometimes the diagram becomes little smaller and the structures are not clear. Okay, now tell me, how many primary bronchi? What is the number of primary bronchi? What is the number of primary bronchi? Okay, the total number is 2. So there are 2 primary bronchi, one going into each lung. Clear? How many secondary bronchi? How many secondary bronchi? Muskan is saying 2. Reshma, you also said 2. Was this answer for primary or secondary? Himanshu is saying 5. Hiren is saying 5. Anusha is saying 5. 5. Lokpal also says 5. Priya also says 5. See, when we say primary bronchi, we are using plural. So you have to give the total number. So there are 2. One left, one right. How many secondary? 3 in the right lung and 2 in the left lung. So our answer should be 5. Muskan is saying 3. This was for first. Muskan, see, there are only 2 bronchi, primary bronchi. One going into the left lung, one going into the right lung. Then secondary bronchi, 3 in the right lung and 2 in the left lung. But if a general question is asked, how many primary bronchi you have? Answer is 2. How many secondary bronchi you have? The answer is 5. 3 and 2. Clear? Primary 2, secondary 5. Very good. All right. Any confusion? What is the function of pleural membrane? Function of pleural membrane. We have not taken individual parts yet. We will be talking about it later. But what is the function of the pleural membranes? If a question is, what is the function of pleural membrane? What will be your answer? If you have understood the structure, then you should be able to answer this. What is the function of pleura? It reduces the friction with thoracic wall, helps in expansion of lung as we breathe. Can we say the same thing in a slightly technical way? Can I say that pleura helps in maintaining the intrapulmonary pressure, or helps in regulation of intrapulmonary pressures? Anusha, what you have written is the function of the pleural fluid. Pleural fluid performs two functions. One, it keeps the two membranes together, and it acts as a lubricant between these two membranes, and also the protection. So pleural fluid performs three functions: keeps the two membranes together, acts as a lubricant, and also protects, acts as a shock absorber. So it is basically because of these two membranes, the pressure inside the lungs is maintained or regulated. So apart from the protection, it also helps in regulation of that pressure. Okay, so in this part, only the system part, what is that thing which you have not understood? Holds visceral and pleural membranes together, that is the fluid, yes. In the structure part, is there anything which is not clear? Everything is clear. What about others? Muskan says everything is clear. Karthik, Piyush also, Hiren also, very good. So now, shall we start taking individual parts? Membrane functions. Anusha is saying you forgot the membrane function. Which membrane are we talking about? The pleural membrane? Okay. Yes, okay. Let me just go over pleural membrane one more time, and then we will start with the nasal chamber. Okay. Suppose this is our lung. Okay, we are just drawing one just to understand the membranes. And this is one membrane which is sort of attached to the wall of the lung. Okay, and I'm not drawing it completely. This is the visceral membrane. Pleural membrane, or pleura, is a double membrane. Pleura is double membrane. Inner is visceral and outer is parietal. Okay, so we have drawn the inner one. Now this visceral membrane is attached to the wall of lung. Okay, and this is the outer one. This is the parietal. Now this parietal one is attached on the outer side to another color, to the thoracic wall. You know, in this thoracic wall you will find the ribs cut here. So these are the ribs. So this one which we have drawn is thoracic wall, and these are the ribs. So now what happens is, when the muscles contract, when we come to the breathing mechanism, we'll talk about this. When the muscles contract, this thoracic wall moves outwards. When the thoracic wall moves out, because this parietal is attached to the thoracic wall. So if the thoracic wall moves out, along with it, the parietal membrane will also go out. So because of this, the blue one which we have drawn, that also goes out. Here is a fluid, and the job of the fluid is to keep the parietal and the visceral together. So if parietal is going out, it is going to pull the visceral also along with it. And if visceral also goes out, it is attached to the wall of the lung. So the lung wall also moves out. So if the lung wall also goes out, then the volume of or inside the lungs will, so the lung wall will also come here, it will come here. So if the lung wall goes out, the volume of the lungs will increase. If volume increases, pressure decreases. So here there will be low pressure. We call it a negative pressure. Negative pressure is nothing but a suction. So when pressure decreases, we call it there is a negative pressure or a suction. So air from higher pressure, that is atmosphere, will start moving inside the lungs. This is inhalation. So these membranes, because they are attached to something, they are able to maintain this pressure inside the lungs. Okay, who asked this question about the membrane? Anusha. Is it clear now? Is this part clear? Very good. So now let us do one thing. Let us start with one structure, that is the nasal chamber. Let us start with nasal chamber. First part, nasal chamber, and it is divided into three parts. There is no partition or as such demarcation, but there are three parts. The first is called vestibule. The second is called the respiratory chamber. And the third is called olfactory chamber. So there are three parts in each nasal chamber. So if you talk about one nostril, on this side three things: first vestibule, then respiratory, then olfactory. On this side also same. What is the function of the vestibule? The function of vestibule is filtration of the air. What is the function of respiratory chamber? It regulates or maintains the temperature temperature of the air that enters. And olfactory is obviously the name telling us it is responsible for detection of the sense of smell. All right, now this is the nasal chamber. Now the first part, which is the vestibule, is lined with cells which are mucus cells, and they also have hair. So here there are hair and mucus cells. So if you're talking about the first, vestibule, it is lined with mucous membrane and has hair. Now what is the function of these hair? The hair help to filter the air. So that is filtration which is taking place. At the same time, the dust particles, germs stick to the mucus, and if dust particles either getting filtered or they stick to the mucus, the air which goes into the posterior chambers, that is respiratory and olfactory and ultimately into our lungs, is clean. And that is why we say it helps in filtration of air. And that is why it is normally said that you should breathe through your nose, because our nose or nasal chambers have all those things which is required to keep our lungs healthy, free from infections. So now we know what is in the vestibule: mucus cells, mucous membrane and hair. So this part is the vestibule. Now behind that comes the respiratory part or respiratory chamber. The lining of respiratory chamber is highly vascular with mucus cells. So the second is respiratory chamber. Its lining, or it is lined with highly vascular mucous membrane. Now why is this highly vascular? And as we have said, its job is to maintain the temperature. Let me explain it first and then we will write these things down. Up till now in the vestibular part, is there any confusion in the vestibular part? If vestibular part is clear, then we come to the respiratory part or respiratory chamber. Okay, Piyush says everything is clear. What about others? Is this part absolutely clear? Muskan also says it is clear. Reshma, Anusha, Geeta. Geeta, are you attending this class for the first time? Because I don't remember seeing your name earlier. Because others I remember. Yes, okay. And what is the reason for joining in so late? I have taken classes for the entire month of, I think, October. We started from 6th to 7th. This is your first class, okay. So why were you not able to attend the earlier ones? Oh, you found it today. And how did you find it? Was it an accidental thing? Or did somebody tell you? Oh, accidentally. Okay. All right. So now I think you should not be missing on any class after this. Because once you are here, then one after the other, we will complete the entire thing. Okay. So, oh, you watched the recorded ones earlier. Okay. Now, let us come back to the second chamber, that is the respiratory chamber or respiratory compartment. Its job is to maintain the temperature of the air that enters. Now, let me take a situation. Suppose we inhale cold air. Now, there is a chance that this cold air is going to enter up to our alveoli. We know alveoli are very, very thin, delicate structures. So, this lower temperature cold air might damage the alveoli. Second situation, if we inhale hot air, then this hot air also might enter into our lungs and damage the membrane of alveoli. So, the air which should reach our alveoli should be at the body temperature. So, what is the job of this respiratory chamber is, if you inhale cold air, it has to warm it up to the body temperature. If you inhale hot air, it has to cool it up to the body temperature. Is it not working like air conditioner? So, here we say that it works like AC. What is the role of an air conditioner? It has to regulate the temperature inside the room. So that is the job of this chamber. Now, how is this achieved? Suppose we take in cold air, we inhale cold air. Now we have to warm it up. So what happens is, in this respiratory chamber, more and more blood is sent. Because it is vascular, there is more blood supply, and blood helps in distribution of heat. So if there is more blood supply, membrane is anyways very thin. So from here, the heat is going to radiate into the chamber. And the air which is gone in was cold. By taking the heat from the blood, it will come to the body temperature. Second situation. If you inhale very hot air, you want to cool it down. So then there is more of mucus secretion in this chamber. And because of this heat or because of this hot air which is entering into our nasal chamber, mucus will evaporate. And we know evaporation requires latent heat of vaporization. And that mucus, when evaporates, it takes the heat from that hot air. And if the heat is taken from that hot air, the temperature of the air will come down. And then you take it into your lungs. So is the working of respiratory chamber clear? How this respiratory chamber is able to regulate the temperature. Is this part clear? And that is why it is vascular and mucus. Okay, Muskan says she got it, everything is clear. What about others? physics plus biology, respiratory mechanism. That is why nowadays we have subjects like biophysics and biochemistry, because the things, these branches are all related. Okay, explain the cold one again. Piyush is saying if we intake air from our mouth, then also the temperature is controlled or not. No, it is not. And that is why I said normally we are asked to breathe through our nose, because one, there is filtration through the vestibular part. Second, there is a temperature regulation. And if you breathe through your mouth, which we normally do while talking, then in our buccal cavity there is no such filtration, there is no such temperature regulation, and directly the air which is going in, maybe it with dust or germs, whatever the temperature, it is straight away going into your trachea. Okay, so Reshma wants to understand the cold wind regulation again, temperature regulation again. See, I was telling you that if we inhale cold air, then your job is to warm it up. So when this cold air enters, then what happens is, here the blood circulation increases, or there is more blood which is sent to this particular area, and blood is responsible for homeothermy, proper distribution of heat. So if more and more blood is coming here, that means more and more heat from the blood would radiate. Now when this heat radiates here, the cold air, when it gets the heat, it becomes warmer, and then it goes into our trachea. Is it clear? Reshma, is the cold air inhalation, how the temperature is regulated, clear? And then we will take the second option. When we inhale warm air or hot air. Reshma, you asked a question about, or you had a doubt about cold wind or air. So is it clear now? Okay. Now let us say if you inhale hot air. So what is done in this chamber is, there is more and more mucus secretion. There is more and more mucus secretion. Now because of this hot air, the heat is taken and the mucus evaporates. Now because this heat is taken from the hot air, the air which now comes here is again warmer or slightly colder. So either the circulation is increased or the mucus production is increased, and this ultimately helps in regulation of the air's temperature. Because if cold air goes into our lungs or hot air goes into our lungs, it is ultimately going to damage the alveoli. So we now have understood the function of vestibule, which is mainly filtration due to two things. One is hair and second is due to mucus. And the second chamber is the respiratory chamber, which acts as an air conditioner. It regulates the temperature of the air. So if you breathe in hot, it has to bring it down to body temperature, cool it down to body temperature. If you inhale cold, it has to warm it up to body temperature. Now you might think that we inhale and exhale in such a short period of time, so all this happens in this short period of time? Yes, it happens in short period of time. And that is why we say that if a structure is designed for doing a particular job, you should be using that structure. So for inhalation, exhalation, we should be using our nose only, because it has filtration mechanism also and it has temperature regulation mechanism also. If you do it with your mouth, which happens. Like right now I'm talking, and when I'm talking, you inhale and exhale through your mouth, but you cannot do anything. So whenever you're not talking, try to breathe through your nose. So two parts of the nasal chamber we have done. Third part, that is olfactory, which is for the sense of smell. That we will start tomorrow, because here we have to talk about the olfactory membrane also, because that's a sense organ. Now the parts that we have done today, in this part, is there any confusion? We started with branchial respiration, that is respiration through gills. And we also said that the animals who have to take oxygen from water, they encounter certain difficulties. The difficulties are that the medium is denser, it contains less oxygen, and the rate of diffusion is also very, very slow. They have gills, and how have they adapted to take this less oxygen, diffusing at a lesser pace and in a denser medium? That is through two things. There has to be a continuous flow of water on the gills, and there is counter current mechanism. So counter current helps in one very simple thing. The blood which comes in contact with water is always going to have less oxygen. So there will always be diffusion of oxygen from water into the blood. Then we came to pulmonary. That is respiration through lungs. And why lungs? Why not skin? So we have a comparison also. So our lungs are better organs for respiration as compared to the skin. They are thin, they are mucus, and the surface area, the figures are right in front of you. So those are important comparative things. And then we started with our respiratory system, the tract, the organ, and diaphragm. So we made the complete system, and then we started with each and every part. So the first part that we took was nasal chamber. And in nasal chamber we have talked only about two parts. That is vestibular part and the respiratory part. Now in this part, Hiren is asking, if fishes are stationary, will they still be able to take oxygen? Yes, because the flow of water on the gills is not because it is moving. The gill slits are designed in such a manner that the water is flowing over it. And tell me, from where the fishes take water? How does the water go in the gills? Have you seen a bony fish? Have you seen a fish? I'm sure you have. When we see a fish in an aquarium, suppose this is a fish. This is a bony fish which I have drawn. And if you see these bony fishes, you would find that they keep moving their lips. So they gulp water. So water is going in from here and coming out through the gills. So whether it is stationary or it is moving, it can gulp water. Water enters through mouth. Yes, Muskan, that's right. So whether it is stationary or moving, it can continuously take water, or rather it continuously takes water through its mouth, so that through the gills that water goes out, and when it goes through the gills, it is this exchange of gases is going to take place. Yes, Anusha is saying, and that's when we say they're talking to us. Yeah, because their lips move, so it appears as if they're talking to you. Yes, right. Okay, Hiren, that's not a problem at all. It happens. Okay, anything else in the part which we have done so far? Otherwise, we'll stop the class, and tomorrow we will meet at the same time, and we'll continue from the nasal chamber and the other parts. So let me know if there is anything which is difficult, anything which is not clear, and as usual you have to just revise it, draw the diagrams which we made. The complete respiratory system diagram was like on a smaller screen for you maybe, so make it on a big page so that each and every part can be clearly labeled, and write the function of that particular part there itself on the diagram, so that when we revise, we see the diagram and everything is written around it. It is easy for us to revise. Okay, so I think Geeta, Reshma, Piyush, Hiren, everyone is okay, they have understood it. Can you do NCERT underlining series? Ma'am, can we start reading NCERT of this chapter? You can, on your own if you want, you can. But maybe what I'm going to do is, after this chapter is over, I'll tell you that you sit with your NCERTs. And then yes, I will scan the book and I will tell you which page and which line, because there are certain important statements which we have to go through. But you don't have to wait for that, you can start reading NCERT. So once we understand the part here, switch to NCERT, read it from NCERT. So you have the understanding thing done here, you read NCERT, and if there is any confusion, the next day, the first thing is doubt solving. Alright, so I will see you tomorrow at the same time, and we will again have a 90-minute session, and we'll continue with the nasal chamber. And those who have not taken the subscription yet, they need to do it fast, because otherwise, as people are saying today that they found out this channel accidentally, similarly they'll get to know that I am on Plus and I have completed a module and they got to know it very late. Okay, so don't forget to take this subscription and use the code. Okay, you guys also have a nice day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.